I myself am coming into my cultural indigeneity is what we call it, but my cultural identity as an adult. And so it's important that we have that historical understanding of who we are. But sometimes we can run the risk of, if we center our culturally responsive practices only on the history of Indigenous peoples, we risk perpetuating the vanishing Indian stereotype. So this is evident that we see a lot in course materials where, authors and teachers talk about Indigenous communities in the past tense. Native Americans were, Native Americans used to, Native Americans did. So while the intentions might be good in bringing that different historical lens to the forefront, if we're not using present language, we run the risk of doing more harm than if we were to completely exclude Indigenous culture and history from the classroom altogether. So what we're going to share today is a way that we can blend the past with the present in a way that centers Indigenous culture so that it's not stereotypical nonsense. And so we bring to the discussion how technology can support all three elements of Gloria Ladson-Billings' definition, because we understand that in this day and age, technology does play a critical role in our cultural experiences. So we're just going to quick unpack the Oceti Sakowin Essential Understandings. And I know that a lot of you probably are familiar with these, but I want to kind of look at it from more of a contemporary lens. So Oceti Sakowin Essential Understanding, OSEU number 1, lands and environment. So it's important that we understand where we come from, the land bases from which Indigenous peoples originate, but also as educators, how can we consider the contemporary issues that impact the land and environment? And how do those issues impact Indigenous nations as well as general society? So I share a picture here from around Cannonball up in Standing Rock, as we know the issues up there around No Dapple. Okay. Next slide. Okay, OSU number 2, identity and resiliency. This is where we can really look to promote a strong sense of self. So one of the ways that I could say, Da Makota, I am Dakota, it helps us to understand how we cultivate a positive cultural identity and tap into our historical resilience. So fighting who we are. So I love this image of this young girl who knows who she is and bringing her cultural identity and the issues that impact her community as an Indigenous woman to the forefront. Okay, and then OSCU number 3, culture and language. So how can we access culture and language in the 21st century? And specifically in current times in social distancing, how are we providing access to culture and language through technology means? So I took a snapshot of this. If you're not a member of the social distancing powwow group on Facebook, this is absolutely amazing because it's not just sharing culture and language of the Oceti Sakowin, the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota people, but from Indigenous peoples all over Turtle Island. Okay, OSU number 4, kinship and harmony. So while it's critical that Indigenous learners, especially Oceti Sakowin communities in the state of South Dakota, understand our traditional kinship systems, what do those systems look like today? Is there a difference? Are the systems the same as they were traditionally, or are they somewhat different? How has our kinship system potentially evolved over time? Okay, OSU number 5, oral tradition and storytelling. Oral tradition is the backbone of our cultures. It is how we transmitted knowledge, protocol, everything, and it's how we have sustained who we are as a people today. So we still have access to some wonderful storytellers. Here, Albert Whitehat, he's no longer with us, but he has left with us a legacy through amazing storytelling and through books and language writings. And I've used a lot of his own work in the formation of my own cultural identity, and his books reach everyone. But we also wonder, how do we make storytelling accessible through technology? How do we do that in the time of a global pandemic? And so I also share an image of the Facebook read aloud group, Indigenous Storytime, where you can join that and listen to stories every day, cultural stories and language from across Turtle Island. OSU number 6 addresses sovereignty and treaties. So it actually encourages a critical discussion about these issues and how treaties impact communities today. So these treaties were put in place many years ago, but they still have a tremendous impact on not only our people, but the survivance of our community's culture and language. And then finally, OSEU number 7, way of life and development. So we can discuss the traditional way of life and how that traditional way of life impacts, drives, and informs our evolved Indigenous way of life. This essential understanding helps us critique and discuss how we might prioritize education, especially Indigenous education, how we might prioritize economic development and language revitalization. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt as he can share some information specific to his elementary classroom.
Okay, so just to personalize the story a little bit, I am not Native, so my journey has been a little bit different. My children all are, and they were all born here on Pine Ridge. So the quest for me was, they went through this educational system here, and they've done fine, but there were still things missing. So you know, and it's well documented. Here's a story that came out last fall about the way Native American students are falling behind according to standardized testing. And so it was like, we need to do something different with my younger kids. So that started a quest of learning the language, learning culture, and trying to hand it off to our children, and then to other children that were wanting to be involved too. And so you know, finding a framework for learning, and finding a framework for learning about language and culture. Finding Oceti Sakowin Essential for Understandings was very important for our class, because it gave us a guideline. It gave us a guide to start following of like, well, what should we be teaching kids? Not only what should we be teaching kids in our classroom, what should everybody here at this school be teaching Native kids? As a matter of fact, what should everybody in the state be teaching Native kids? And so it really made me think differently, and it gave me a framework and allowed for us to have something to follow. And so, okay. So just to take it alive, and this is, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the Wolak Culture Project, and we're going to look at that here in a second. But, you know, this is one of the quotes that they put in the poster, and I just thought it was really relevant in thinking about things, because it was like, if we have one of the highest rates of suicide or kids feeling inadequate, we have to ask ourselves why. What's the problem? If we're trying to push our kids into a system that's not going to work for our kids, for my kids, then why are we doing that? Why do we continue to do it? I mean, the system hasn't worked since it started in 1880s, since Native kids started going to school, and we're continuing to do the same system. I think we're trying to force something else onto something that shouldn't be that way. And so if we look at the United States, I think the statistics are something like 80% white female are the teachers. So what ideas are you bringing into the classroom? What kind of mentality are you bringing to the classroom? And what kind of thought process are you pushing into the classroom onto these children? And his idea of like, yes, the American dream, but the children should know that they are Lakota, and that they can have the Lakota dream, but they don't have to be something else to be successful. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey, and then a little bit about how we use technology to make sure that we get to Oceti Sakowin Essential for Understandings in our classroom, and then we try to share with other students at Red Cloud School. So it's really, I mean, the whole idea was to mix the past and to also like understand that today the kids are on iPads and computers and phones, and my 3-year-old uses the iPads just as good as my 17-year-old uses the iPad. So we got to make sure that we have access for all those children. Okay, so I know that many of you are familiar with Wolak Culture Project, wolakcultureproject.org. I'm going to share a little video that they made. They can talk about it better than I can talk about it. if you're not familiar with it, you definitely need to become familiar with it. It definitely has all the Oceti Sakowin Essential for understandings. It has resources for you. And so let me see here. Here's the YouTube site that we use. And then I guess I'll show you part of this video here. Can everybody hear that? Can you hear that?
Grandchildren, today I come and I want to share some stories with you so that these stories will never die. These stories are going to be yours. Your responsibility to carry on for the next generation.
When I introduce myself, I am Lakota from the Black Hills, or from the Oceti Sakowin, from these 7 nations, because the reservations are a very recent phenomena for us. You know, we've not been in reservations most of our thousands of years of existence as a people. So that is a really new thing. So I try to encourage young people to think about their identity in a more bigger way.
Each one has a dialect, and we speak Indian together. We speak, but we each understand each other.
But when you take on a relative willingly and by choice, that relationship is even more sacred. It's even more of a commitment, because now you're by choice or by some circumstance are bringing a relative in to your Tioshpaya.
Well, Ella Deloria really put it across so simple. She said, kinship is the all-important matter, she said.
But she made the difference. We all need to be loved. It's one of the greatest things a human being needs, to be loved.
He comes back and he says, did you see it? And I said, no. And he said, okay. He said, all the time that you've been sitting here, there's this little bird up on this branch, and that little tiny bird is carrying 10 times its weight. It's going over here and it's getting a piece of branch. It's taking it back over there. Somehow it's making this little nest. And he said, you can be assured that that little bird is not going to lay an egg until that nest is done. So he looked at me and he said, okay, Miss Smart Know-It-All. He said, do you have a nest? And I said, no. And he said, well, that's what you have.
So the elder duck told him, he said, oh, Nayahon below, he said, there, you heard him. He said, if any of you open your eyes, he said, your eyes are going to get small. They're going to get red, he said.
Fish and Wildlife had an article not long ago about Indian foods. I said they forgot one thing. Chanakpa, tree ears. But those tree ears are mushrooms that grew on trees. The Indians ate those because they're finding out that those mushrooms were really nutritious, you know.
This wasn't written for Native children. It was written for non-Native children as well.
When boarding schools started and the government was attempting to kill the Indian and save the man, that the biggest instrument for that was education. It was the schools. Native kids were sent to schools who were forbidden to speak Lakota or any other Native language. The boys' hair were cut. We were made to wear different clothes. All those things happened. and we began to learn a different history, a different way of doing things. Now, you fast forward that to today, and there are Lakota language courses, other native language courses in schools. We're doing what you all are doing. And there are, 38 native colleges on reservations throughout the country, or so.
Okay, so that's one resource that, I mean, if you don't know about it, I hope that most of you have already heard about it, had some chance to experience it. If you haven't, I mean, here gives you a resource to share Oceti Sakowin Essential for Understandings from day one. So if you personally have no knowledge about culture and history and the things that we're trying to show in the state now, they have this for you. And right along with the video, they have questions for you. So right when you get done with the video, you have questions that you can ask. It's a wonderful resource. They have Lakota language stories that are all the way in Lakota. That's the ones that we use. And then they have other resources that you can use. If you haven't, like I said, haven't had a chance to look at this, it's beautifully laid out. It allows you from day one, or if you're not doing anything, or if you haven't learned about Oceti Sakowin Essential for Understandings yourself, then you can start your own journey. So
I'd also like to just do a quick shout out to, I know that Scott Simpson and Charla Stever, I believe Charla's here on this one as well, but a lot of the time and effort, and Ryan Young, I'm sorry, not Ryan Young, wrong Ryan at Thai, but have put a lot of time and effort into curating these videos and doing a lot of travel to tribal communities to ensure that this is accessible to all of us. So there's a lot of resources on the Thai website on how to utilize the Wolakota project page.
Okay, so the next step. So you got Oceti Sakowin Essential for Understandings. You got Wolakota project. So you're bringing culture into your classroom, and then your next step is, well, I want to start adding some language. I want to add language either with my kids, or I want to add language myself, but I don't know any Lakota. Or how do I start learning? I'm far away from school that teaches it. Well, this is a new app that's been created. It's called Oceti.com. I'll show you a little short video with them too. Not a real long one. We won't watch the whole thing.
For the next few minutes, I'd like to introduce you to a new language learning platform built specifically to help you learn the Lakota language. Oceti is a modern mobile and online application with the depth and breadth of the Lakota Language Consortium's 14 years of Lakota curriculum built into its core. We worked with fluent speakers Ben Blackbear, Iris Eagle Chasing, and many others to produce an unparalleled resource for Lakota learners that already has a growing community of more than 4,000 learners. Your journey to become a Lakota speaker can begin today.
Okay, and the beauty of this app is that the learning can start from day one. The learning can start for you. The learning can start from the students. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for yourself to start a journey. You don't have to wait to take a class. It can start now. So Oceti from the Lakota Language Consortium is a beautiful use of technology to help learn the language, but also for the students to get involved from whatever age that they are in your classrooms. Okay, so the next couple of things I want to talk about is some apps that we actually made or we partnered to make. So 7 Generations Games is a lady started this out of California. She's actually, and some of you probably met her before, she's Ronda Rousey's mom. But she started a program where they started making games that are bilingual, Spanish, and then native languages like Ojibwe. And then so I talked to her and said, well, what about doing one in Lakota? And so she said that they'd be willing to do that. We made a partnership and we made the first making camp in Lakota. It's free. You can download this for free. It's got an English version. It's got a Lakota version. You can toggle inside of the game to get to either version. It's for grades 3 through 5. It's got multiplication and division. It also has like some culture videos just to talk about culture. I'll show you this. There's another little quick video so you can kind of get a feel for it. like I said, you can download that. You can download it for your computer. You can download it for your iPad, phone. It's free. It's another resource. Definitely has a lot of the Oceti Sakowin Essential understandings. They got, like I said, they have videos and just the imagery and just making sure that, you know, brown kids and Native kids are part of your curriculum. Okay, so I wanted to share some of this other stuff too. This is so for those of you that are real tech savvy, you know what open source computer programs are. So open source computer programs, for those of you who don't know, are where someone made a program and anybody can go in there and change the source code. Anybody can use it and change the language. So we've done that with some apps and some games. And one of the games that we did was Edu Activate. And Edu Activate, I've included the link in here. You can download it to your computer, or there's two different apps. There's a math app and a language arts app. So Edu Activate has been done in like 11 different languages. We did it just in Lakota. There's no speaking on it, but it's another resource. And this one's not quite done, but I wanted to share it with you. A Native guy from Jonathan Liu from Rapid City, he promised his grandmother that he would make a Native game to help preserve the language. And he wanted to do a language-based game. And him and his brothers, they're almost done with this game. I'm looking real forward to it. We've actually had the beta version, so the kids have gotten to play it. It's a wonderful game. He's done a wonderful job. He graduated from School of Mines and Computer Science. His brothers are great artists. And I encourage you to keep your eye out for this game, Unchi Wichoyake. And it was another thing that'll be real beneficial to have in your classroom, because not only does it's a game, but it has like stories, it has a lot of the old the stories that Deloria told in her books, and it's a wonderful resource. Okay, now, videos. So we talked about videos earlier in the Wolakota videos. Now this is another set of videos. This is another set of videos that we made when I was at the daycare. We started making these. So for one thing, I couldn't talk Lakota very good, so that was a problem. And the other problem is that we had a lot of downtime. So, you know, we were trying to manage a daycare, but what were the kids listening to when they weren't with us? Were they just playing, or were they able to hear Lakota, hear it from fluent speakers? So we came up with the idea to start making videos. So we ended up making this site called Waiawa Chikala. It's got 188 videos on it. Let me show you a little promo. And so we tried to do it as professional as we could, so that the kids had the opportunity to stay in the language even when we weren't talking to them. There's 188 videos on it. And the reason why I'm showing it, because it is all Lakota, so it's not as much for non-Lakota speakers. But the one thing that we've been doing with it is, I know that with the people having to go online to do their technology, I know that many of you are familiar with Edpuzzle. But I wanted to share Edpuzzle with you that don't know about it, because we've used that with the videos to take it to our kids. And so now they're not just watching the video, they have to answer a couple questions about the video. I think it's a wonderful source to make a curriculum. You could make a Wolakota curriculum off the Wolakota project with those questions. But if you haven't checked out Edpuzzle, you should definitely check it out. And the last thing I wanted to show you too was just some other things that we use. In our classroom. If you're not familiar with Bitsboard, it's an app it's a flashcard app for iPads and phones. You make your own set of flashcards, then you have 25 games. So right away, as soon as you get done, you have 25 games. It's a wonderful resource. You can make classes. We have a set of classes. I think we've made over 150 boards that you can have access to, and also Tiny Tap, which we're just starting to get into. Educational games, probably these are more elementary based, but another wonderful resource. Okay, and so the last thing that me and Tamera wanted to talk about a little bit was, you know, with this COVID and moving everything online, it's like you have to really think about what happens in education, what's happening in education, what's happening to education to kids that are living in poverty areas. You know, we are online, so we do teach every day. So in an hour here, I'll go back online with our kids to do our second session of education. But I know some kids don't have internet, so they have to go to someone else's house. They have to go to their cousins. They have to go somewhere else to find internet use. And I just think about like how many kids aren't in school right now? How many kids are not getting any kind of education? How many kids aren't getting any kind of help? How many kids have no one at home to help them? So all of a sudden this divide, like if we're looking at test scores, and there's already a big divide between Native American students and other students in South Dakota, and then a big percentage of our population, of Native population, isn't attending school right now, well, that's 9 weeks of education that's lost. It's lost. And it's not like something you're going to get back. You're not going to all of a sudden make up for those 9 weeks. Life just continues to move on. Now you were in third grade. You missed the last fourth quarter. Well, you missed those skills. Now we're starting fourth grade. We expect you to learn those fourth grade skills. Well, on the opposite end is if you're in a suburban America or in a better off situation, then your kids continue on with Khan Academy or one of the 1,000 other online resources, ensuring that those children continue to progress through their system. And so, you know, the thing was like, how can we create, and this is like the continuing question for us and as we move forward, how do we create stuff that not only can keep our kids moving forward, but if they have no one at home to help them, that they want to do, that they know that Bitsport is accessible to them, that they know that Making Camp and these other apps are something that they want to play and that they can get on and see other Native people and participate in activities that continue to engage them academically, engage them socially and emotionally, and continue their growth. And so I just think that as we get ready to finish this up and open this up for questions, I just wanted to leave you with that thought and just what are you doing as a classroom instructor, especially if you're teaching Native children, to ensure that their experience is one that child's worthy of. Tamera?
Yes, thank you for that. So at this point, we did want to open it up to some questions. I know we had a focus, as Matt said, on some elementary classrooms, but I'm hoping that you're able to see how a lot of these resources are accessible to all grade levels and to adult learners as well. So I think we're going to go ahead and, Connie, I think, are they going to do the hand raising or what questions, comments? We really wanted to elicit some discussion around some of the inequity challenges. I think you're on mute, Connie.
It's always best to unmute yourself before you start yapping. Go ahead, and I think you can just type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand.
So I see that Lynette Cooney, you said 49% of the students at Pine Ridge School do not have access to Wi-Fi, and that is definitely a challenge that, you know, a lot of these resources won't necessarily alleviate. One of the things that I think that I've found most useful, and again, it's just a challenge that we have always got to work together to think through. But that was one of the main reasons for the initiation or the creation of the Indigenous Story Time, because although some families might not have Wi-Fi, I think we can. It's safe to say that a lot of our families do have access to a phone, a cell phone, maybe prepaid minutes, maybe having a Facebook account. So we wanted to have a platform where culture and language was still accessible, even if it was as minimal as a few minutes on a prepaid phone to listen to some storytelling.
Hello.
Hi.
I kind of have to go back to old school because Landrian School, we have students all over the United States. And I know, like I say, a lot of them don't have technology. And one of my assignments was for my Native history course was just basically doing a research paper on your tribe. So I went back to old school, pencil and paper, and they said, well, we don't have access. I said, but does your phone work? And they said, yes. I said, okay, it's time to start calling up your relatives, start talking to the elders, start interviewing. So hopefully, you know, we can get back to the technology use, but right now, old school method of interviewing elders and relatives to get those stories and bring back that family bond without having to leave the house, and just using the technology of a phone to reach out. And then I'm still getting it on paper and pencil and sent in. So that's what I had to go to this time period.
Pidamia.
Ošte.
Well, I think that's a great point too. And it's like, even the idea of like, we're going to be back in school at some point. So when you go back to school, how is your classroom looking that you're changing the way that kids think and act towards their native identity, right? So if you're showing Mo Lakota Project, and then you're showing videos, or you're bringing in elders and you're having them talk, and then they're continuing on to go out to talk to their own family. I mean, I think it's like reshaping some of the ideas of how we educate kids in South Dakota, because we miss some of those things. We're missing them, and we're missing them at our school here, and I know we're missing them at other schools, because if something has to change, right? Because if the education and the test scores are so poor, and we're just going to continue to do the same thing year after year after year and say, well, we're going to just do more of it and it will work. Well, it's not working. It's not working. That report from last year, it's not working. How are we going to change? What things are we going to change to create a different educational system that will improve the educational system for Native students?
I do have a question. This is Zelda, and I'm wondering what, if anyone has been able to find computers or laptops for the students, and what people have found is the most durable and best for their students. I work at Job Corps, and so mine are 16 to 25-year-olds. Just thoughts from anyone.
Hi, this is Dorothy Aguilera Black Bear. The iPads are primarily pretty durable. They're easy to use. The kids don't need much guidance on it. If it's an app, you can put on almost any application on it, and use any platform of teaching that you need. And you don't need virus software for Apple products.
Thank you for that, Dorothy.
Sure.
I know that we've had a lot of luck, at least with our learners at Red Cloud, with the Chromebooks. Those things can take a beating and a pretty affordable option too. And then I also just want to share out what Lynette Cooney, if you're in the Pine Ridge area, the Oglala Sioux Tribe Childcare has grant money to buy hotspots and technology equipment. And I'm also going to, so I'll probably put that in the resources page as soon as we're done here. And then I have also another resource for educational resources grant applications through NDN Collective that we can possibly explore utilizing. So I'll share that link as well. One other resource I do want to kind of bring to your attention to kind of think outside the box when we don't have access to technology. And I'm just going to share the screen quick, Matt. So I'm going to take over on that just to share this. And this is in the resources section. But this is the article in our resources page. So I'm just sharing what that looks like here, a picture of Matt in his classroom. If you have any questions directly, you can click on our names and that'll link out to our email addresses. But under the resources page, this article was just published last week, Indigenous Children Survivance in the Times that we're in. And I thought that it was extremely useful of giving some ideas of how teachers and families can create learning opportunities that are less technology focused and just focused on cultural teaching. So they give, you know, for example, an area of population Southwest communities for early childhood, elementary, and high school. But what are the things outside in nature? I know that in Pine Ridge, especially out in the district areas, you know, just taking a walk along the creek, how can you find certain indigenous plants and wildlife and have discussions, planting, baking, cooking outside. So when we think about what indigenous education looks like, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be on a computer or a device. We don't necessarily have to be looking at math and English language arts, but how did we learn as Indigenous people? Through storytelling, through surviving, through everything around us. So we have access to that, and just kind of reimagining or remembering how we utilized everything around us for the benefit. So that's a great resource that I encourage you to take a look at and share with other educators.
Did you have any? So Mr. Flamand, I teach Native American history. One of my courses I teach and stuff like that. I do the Oceti on just a section because we have 35 to 40 different tribal nations at our school. So I try to encompass as many different things, and I have the students doing their own research so that they become the teachers and teach everybody else about their culture and their tribes, and spread their knowledge to the rest of the students by doing this research when I'm on back on campus. But I was just going to say, there are a lot of good videos that have come out nowadays on TeacherTube and YouTube and even on Amazon Prime that really I use a lot in my teachings. And I just wanted to give that a shout out there that it's come a long way. Native American resources has come a long way since I started teaching. And when I first started teaching, I couldn't find anything. And now, like you both have just put out there a lot of good resources. I am absolutely amazed and thankful that so many people are working so hard to change the paradigm that, you know, we need to focus on our first people. So thank you too.
And are there any final questions, closing thoughts, or comments? I believe we're probably getting close to the end of our session.
We're down to just a few minutes left.
I know I'm full of questions. I have a quick one. That video that you're showing with the Oceti, that's a really awesome video with a lot of the elders. Do you think they'll have enough money to update that eventually with more? Because unfortunately, a lot of those people in the video have passed on nowadays, like Sid and, you know, David, and there's a bunch of them that were in there.
Yeah, I know that we're always looking for funding to support that. I also am aware that we still have access to a lot that have not yet been published. But if you click on those links, it does link out to YouTube. And so there's like hundreds of additional ones. But yeah, no, I mean, we're always looking for additional funding and resources to expand on that video library. Yes. So I don't know. I mean, that kind of answers your question. I know it's probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but we know how.
Could I'll toss something in too about that. If you're not aware of it, and I know this is outside of South Dakota, but teachingsofourElders.org in North Dakota. Right now, there's a pretty strong source bush grant that is supporting new elder interviews, and there are about as many elder interviews on that site as on the Wolokota Project site, and those are currently expanding. There are a number of interviews with elders from Spirit Lake, MHA, that are going up right now. And I expect that there will be more sources for the Wolokota Project interviews as well.
Okay, and I think that site was just put in the chat box too, teachingsofourElders.org.
And I'm adding it to the resource page as we speak. So
nice. Okay, well, lots of people saying thank you, Tamera and Matthew. There were great resources in here. Okay, I have about a minute left if anybody wants to share or ask a question.
Hey, another great place for resources too is the Smithsonian, the Native American Smithsonian. They've been putting some stuff out now, so out of Washington, D.C. But I was trying to find out, I use a video off of YouTube. I was looking for it. It's a great one about the Iroquois Confederation that I think everybody, especially even in this election year, should see, about how Native American democracy is the foundation of all the democracy in the United States. That it was the Iroquois Confederation and how that was built. And it goes back with the storytelling and hits on a lot of the different Oceti standards. I was looking for the word standards. But it was done by the Discovery Channel, narrated by Graham Greene, all native, I think they're all native actors, and they do a really good job. And it tells the story of the Iroquois Confederation and why they came together and how they came together. And it is pretty awesome. I totally recommend everybody take a look at that. And I teach government too. So.
I think we're getting some really great resources. So I went ahead and made our resources document editable. So if you have links or additional books, I see some people are sharing books in the chat. Please feel free to add those to that page, because I feel like these collective resources is just going to make it much more useful for all of us.
I want to say one more thing, because I already talked. But sorry.
No, you're good.
Tamera said something just a little bit ago that really, I think, was really important. She said it doesn't always have to be about math or English. And I think we've got to open our minds and recognize that all of this work is not just to help our Native students do better in their core content area, but actually there's this great wisdom that's coming from these indigenous elders that really can reshape the way we do all of our education. That kind of learning has to happen too for Native students and for everybody, because storytelling, those wonderful things that are coming from our indigenous elders, those are the things that all students really, really need.
And I think following up on that point, that's exactly what research says, though. Research says that you will actually do better, that indigenous students will do better in those core areas if they have a more culture-based education. I mean, that's not me saying that, that's research saying that adding that to your classroom is going to improve the other aspects of your classroom.
And I would like to add one thing. If we would follow the Lakota, the Native American culture in the way that tradition is, and we built our society on those morals and those understandings and those educations, our whole United States and world would be better.